Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State!
Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host Bill DeFilippo, joined tonight by my co-host Matt Filipovitz. Matt, we're back, baby.
Bill, we're back, and I want to make sure our listeners are up to date on what's going on in my life. So I saw Brett Bielema not know the words to take me out to the ball game at a Cubs game a couple weeks ago. That was pretty exciting. And then I slept in a recliner for part of this past weekend, and my back hurts, so I'm getting older. And those are pretty much the two big updates I have going on with me over these past couple months. But we've been gone for a long time.
Yeah, our last episode was was April 17th. It was our recap of the Blue-White game. It's actually very funny. I have a buddy around here who is a longtime listener of the podcast, and I've gotten to know him in being around Columbus, and he's also a big Manchester City supporter, so I see him quite frequently. And he actually asked me this weekend, Bill, when is the podcast coming back? When is this season's podcast going to be here? And it's here. We're here to talk about the 2024 Penn State football season. It's a season where there's a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say walking on eggshells, but Matt, I get the sense that after last season, when there were a lot of Penn State fans coming into the year, viewing it a very specific way. Penn State went into last year ranked 7th in the country, but it had that issue of 2 and 3 coming into the season were in their own division, had to play both of them. And I think we have we're dealing with scar tissue from last year is what I would say.
Big time.
Is a lot of Penn State fans. So when you look at this, we're going to do 10,000-foot views on the offense and the defense on this episode of the pod and end with one little fun thing at the end. But I think as a general, just starting with how we're feeling heading into this season, Matt, we should probably be really optimistic about this Penn State team. But my sense in talking to Penn State fans is not as, I don't want to say, we're not as close to that point as we were at this point last season when it seemed like, you were the architect of using the phrase window year. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of people who felt like last year was the year. That didn't end up happening. And I feel like a lot of people have carried that baggage into this season.
Yeah, real quick, Bill, one thing I want to touch on at the top is we are using a new recording mechanism, a new software. So if the recording sounds weird to anybody, DM the blog at RLR blog on Twitter or at MattFlip42 on Twitter. Let us know about the audio, if it's good, if it's bad. Off the top, Bill, I'll touch on that before I forget.
Sweet.
Yes, as the architect of the window year concept, I have a good amount of optimism about this year, but a lot of that optimism stems from the fact that one specific piece from last year has been changed. Like the quarterback's the same, or the running backs are the same. The receivers lost more than they gained. Like in all honesty, losing Keandre Lambert-Smith, losing Dante Cephas, losing Malik McClain, like a lot. We're hoping that it's, addition by subtraction, but I think a lot of the optimism is hinging on Andy Kotelnicki righting the wrongs of Mike Yurcich's offense. And it's hard to know how to feel about a revamped offense after we just watched this team fall on its face in what a lot of people thought was their best shot based upon the build of the roster to make that 14 playoff. 14 playoff is dead. I get it. That's the way of the dodo. But I feel really optimistic about everything, Bill. But this year, more than any, I don't feel like I can confidently give specific reasons as to why I feel optimistic, except for the fact that the new OC is coming in and I love what he's done elsewhere. But the actual parts of the Penn State offense aren't much different than what we've seen, in 2023. So I think a lot of folks are in the same boat as me, is that they think really highly of Andy Kotelnicki. But again, that scar tissue is pretty thick after what happened last year and what I think that team could have been if they had frankly a better Drew Aller and a better offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember, um, I'm looking right now at what Penn State's odds were to win a national championship. We'll take a step away from the playoff for a second and talk about a national championship or something like I don't think Penn State's winning a national title this year, but on December 10th,
Hot take 5 minutes in, Bill. Wow.
January 10th of 2023, Penn State had 18-1 odds of being the national championship during the 2023 college football season. And by August 31st, that went to 22-1 odds. I don't have the updated number up here. Matt, if you could do me a favor and pull up whatever the national championship odds right now and let us know what Penn State's are. Heading into this season, this is back on January 3rd of 2024, so almost a year to the day from that initial email when those initial odds dropped and Penn State was 18-1. Penn State was 25-1 to win a national championship. Obviously, that's a little bit different, but coming into the season, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Penn State had the tied for the 10th best odds coming into the year with Tennessee. Back like in the moments after the Rose Bowl and whatever bowl game it was that Washington won. Matt, do you have the updated odds right now?
Yes, they are ninth.
They're ninth. Do you have what the actual number is?
Plus 2,000.
So 20-1. There are 20-1 odds right now to win a national championship.
And real quick, Bill, that's behind Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, and weirdly Notre Dame. And directly ahead of Florida State and Michigan, who are at plus 3,000.
Yeah, Notre Dame also just lost their starting left tackle for the year, so interested in how that changes up. But I say all that to say this is we're coming into this season, we're trying to get just our finger on the pulse of how we're feeling, how Penn State fans are feeling. In a lot of ways, Penn State coming into this season is viewed similarly by people who are not us in the Penn State universe as it was coming into last season when you were just taking that snapshot of what that football team is. Like if you're going position by position, quarterback should be better, running backs should be better, wide receiver, TBD, tight end, put a bit of an asterisk on that, but I think they might end up being better just because I think Tyler Warren's going to be a little bit better. Offensive line, step back, potentially defensive end step back, potentially defensive tackle step forward, linebacker step back, cornerback TBD. I'm optimistic. Safety should be, I think safety is going to be probably maybe the best position on this team.
Agreed.
So you look at this team, you look at the big change that you mentioned, Matt, in Andy Kotelnicki replacing Mike Yurcich as offensive coordinator. You look at the fact that their schedule this season, once again, we are going into a season where there are multiple Big Ten teams ahead of Penn State. We haven't gotten the newest poll out yet. I believe
the coaches poll is out.
We just did the coaches poll, which doesn't deserve my respect or yours, but has Ohio State at 2, Oregon at 3, Michigan at 8, SP Plus as of right now. Ohio State at 2, Oregon at 3, Michigan at 6, Penn State at 7. There are, in fact, more Big Ten teams ahead of Penn State right now, but only one of them are on Penn State's schedule. So it's setting up for a season where, like, maybe the team is or isn't as talented. That's eye of the beholder type stuff. There's the one major question, I would say, at quarterback with how big of a step forward, if at all, do we see Drew Aller take? But coming into this year, we were having this conversation about what Penn State can be, should be, whatever. It's viewed as about as talented, about as good of a football team, Matt, with a less daunting schedule of games in front of them. I understand why that scar tissue might exist. I also would understand completely if someone's like, no, I think this Penn State team is going to win 11. Maybe they get really fortunate and win 12 football games this year.
I mean, the 11 games feels realistic, but again, and I don't even know how I want to address this. It doesn't really fall into our discussion topics, but it's really hard to go 3 consecutive years without dropping a dumb game, without losing a game that you should win. And
Yeah.
that's what Penn State's going to have to do. Like, you think back to 2016, the Pitt loss was a dumb one. You think back to 2017, the Michigan State loss was a dumb one. 2018, that team wasn't as good as those two. 2019, Minnesota was a great team. Still think they could have won that game, quote unquote, dumb one. Like, it's really hard to go 3 in a row. Thankfully, if you
Mhm.
lose 2, it's not really a death sentence right now, especially I think for a program like Penn State, who is going to play at least a interesting brand of football for a lot of people. I think Kotelnicki right away is just going to make the interest factor go way up. And
Yeah.
there's enough of like the middle class of college football on this schedule to warrant them being in playoff discussion should they go 10-2. Like West Virginia,
Should
I
be.
think can be that. Wisconsin, I think can be that. USC, I think can be that middle class. Like, obviously you have maybe everyone's national title pick in Ohio State. Um, but again, I think you have enough opportunity here to get some quality wins on the board. And it starts in like 25 days, which is absolutely crazy to me that we are so close to kickoff, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, coming into this season, to mention the schedule, Penn State last year ended up being 22nd in strength of schedule in college football, with a lot of that being buoyed by the fact that Ohio State and Michigan and Iowa were on the schedules. This year, they're coming into the year 33rd in terms of strength of schedule coming into the year. Obviously, we're going to have to see what the teams ahead of them look like, but on their schedule, the only team that is ranked ahead of them in terms of FPI, which is the metric ESPN uses, Ohio State is number 4, and just doing a really quick skim, the next up on the list is USC at 18, while Penn State at 6. So I I I'm not, Matt, able to put myself in a position yet where I feel good picking a record. I feel good picking, are they going to make the playoffs or not? Right now, I'd lean towards, I think they win 11 games and I think they make the playoff for the reason that you mentioned, which is that they've become really good at not dropping games. I have some numbers about the teams that they tend to lose to in ranked games that we'll save for a future episode of the pod. But I think my general thing is it's a weird season in that I don't know if I can set expectations for this team until about 4 p.m. on August 31st, when we know the result of their game against West Virginia. And we know one guy in particular, and that is Drew Aller, what he looks like in his first year under Andy Kotelnicki, his second year as a starting quarterback, and his third year as a college quarterback. Do you feel like you have a little bit more clarity in what you expect out of Penn State this season, what you think they will do this season? And again, this is something that is going to evolve over the next couple of weeks as we dive into things a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more closely. But are you a little more certain in what you think out of this Penn State team than I am?
I think I know in pockets. I think I feel very strongly about like 8 things for certain. I think they're going to be really good as a team punting. I think Riley Thompson is great. I don't know why I led with the punter, but I led with the punter.
Why
Um,
not?
I think they're going to play a really, really exciting style of defense. And I think they're going to take a step back from, frankly, what I thought last year was the best Penn State defense of my lifetime. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's unfair to say. Like, they're still going to be really freaking good, but I don't think they're going to be as talented as they were last year because you're losing a lot of talent. Chop, Adisa, Johnny Dixon, Kalen King, who, even though he wasn't great last year, he still was a threat. Daquan Hardy more so than maybe anybody else. You lose Keaton Ellis, but I think the safety room is going to be better. Bill, go ahead. What were you going to say about Kalen?
No. I'll save this for when we get to the 10K foot view of the defense.
Okay. And then offensively, like, I know that they're going to love to run the football. I know that they're going to get guys in space. I know that they are going to cause confusion with motion. I know that Bo Pribula is going to play a big role. Like, these are things that I know, and all of those things make me excited and make me optimistic. But again, Bill, like, maybe thicker than maybe anybody you're going to hear talk about Penn State football this year, that scar tissue on me is thick as can be. Like, I really bought into last year being the year. And I think a lot of folks did too. I think a lot of people in that staff room did too. Like Yurcich was the first coach or coordinator to ever be fired by Franklin midseason, and they still won 10 games. Like that, I know, Bill, you and I have gone back and forth on this all offseason, but like that tells me that Franklin thought this year could have been different, and he hopefully identified the reason why it wasn't different and plucked him out. And I hope that's the case. Um, I probably lean more 10-2 than 11-1 right now. But again, I'm the guy who thought it was 11-1 or bust last year. And again, I think that you can convince me it's going to be 11-1 very easily. And again, depending on how West Virginia goes, I could be shifting my tune to 11-1 and 12-0. But as things stand right now, I think they're less talented than Ohio State, and I think they're due to drop a dumb one. And I don't know where it's going to come from, but again, I think it's really hard to not lose a dumb one, and very few teams are able to do it 3 years in a row.
Yeah, and the thing that I wanna stress, it's very possible that by the time we get to at USC or at Wisconsin, neither of those are shaping up to be a dumb one. It's very possible that by the time we get to those games,
That's a great point.
Yeah, USC is just like a really dynamic offensive team, and they take enough of a step forward defensively that they are a tough team to deal with. Wisconsin,
TSU Letterman, Danton Lynn, the new DC there.
Yeah,
Just shout out to Danton.
And Wisconsin, we know year 2 under Luke Fickell, they're going to be really good defensively. We'll see what they do. Neither here nor there.
Do you know who the Wisconsin quarterback is, Bill?
You're
going to
Joel
laugh.
Stavi.
It's not somehow. It's not Joel Stavi.
It's funny because over the weekend this came up. Someone asked me this, and I had no idea then, and I just forgot to look it up. Who is it?
Tyler Van Dyke.
I knew it was a transfer of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't remember who it was, but I knew it was some kind of transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll make fun of Wisconsin and Tyler Van Dyke on another time. He seems like a nice young man. I shouldn't do that. But yeah, Matt, let's just do really quickly. We'll do a 10,000-foot view of Penn State on both sides of the football.
Yeah.
And we start on offense. And the thing that's so interesting to me about Penn State's offense this upcoming season, well, looking back to last year. Last year, Drew Aller averaged 6.8 yards per attempt, and it felt like it. In that it felt like when Drew completed a pass, or when Drew got the ball to the hands of a receiver, it went for 6.8 yards. Katron Allen ran for 5.2 yards per attempt. Nick Singleton ran for 4.4. Again, it felt like that. Keandre Lambert-Smith, their top receiver, was at 12.7 yards per reception. Tyler Warren was at 12.4. It's a lot of guys in that 10 to 13 yards per reception type of range. And again, it always felt like that. And that is to say, it felt like Penn State's offense, and this is a thing that we said a lot last year, after years and years and years and years of James Franklin making it a point to say, big plays win football games, they went so radically in the opposite direction, and it ended up killing them in the moments where they needed to be able to throw haymakers against Ohio State, against Michigan, and frankly against Ole Miss.
Or at least have a threat of a haymaker. Like there was no,
or at least have
that would have been equally as valuable at some points.
Mm-hmm. And now coming into this year, we have to see how big of a step forward Drew Aller takes. That is the thing hanging over this entire team. If Drew Aller looks like a first-round NFL draft pick, they are winning 11 football games. Bare minimum. If he looks like a mid-round pick, they're losing to Ohio State, and they're losing to at least one, in all likelihood, to at least one or two of USC and Wisconsin. If he looks like what he was last year, which was a guy who was scared of his own shadow for far too many stretches, someone who has the physical tools, and you could see that he has some stuff that he does well, but he's not consistently enough able to do things that win you football games, this Penn State team is not going to be nearly as good as we think it could be. But if Drew takes that step forward, if we see the running backs used in more creative ways, if we see a passing game that isn't so bland and boring and receivers can't get open, and when they can get open, this, and this, I think there is a real path for Penn State to have an extremely good offense if Andy Kotelnicki is the guy that he has promised to be. What do you say about that?
So on the Aller point, he wasn't what we needed him to be. And I think he'll acknowledge that. I think everybody who watched Penn State football will acknowledge that. But I want to say, in all of that bad, there was a lot of really good and really special football, specifically against like West Virginia. And I know that's a year-old tape at this point, but that player showed me he can play. Aller led the Big Ten in touchdown passes last year. Like, I don't think a lot of people really understand that. Like, it was 25 of them. He tied with little Tua, who is finally out of college football. Good luck to Talia with whatever's next for him. But a 25-2 touchdown interception ratio is nothing to scoff at. How he got there probably is, but that stat line on its face is impressive. Aller's not a statue like I think a lot of us thought he was going to be. Bill, I went back and I listened to our preseason over-unders podcast we did last year. Bill, did you know Aller had more rushing yards last year than Clifford did his last year as a starter?
That doesn't surprise me only because one, Clifford, I think he probably took a few more sacks.
Yep.
Didn't he? That, and like I think Drew, for one of the things he needs to work on is he was pretty quick to go, oh God, he's not open. Oh God, he's not open. Oh God, I got to take off and run for 3 yards. Like, I think that's the thing for him to fix, but he did a really good job as a general thing avoiding negative plays in terms of he did a really good job avoiding sacks, avoiding getting hit in the backfield, these sorts of things.
Yeah, so those two things I think are really great foundations. And again, the 5-star arm talent. Like Aller's got arm talent that's rare, and I think we all know that. Everything else around him has to, buoy up. Like a rising tide lifts all ships. They've got to find a way to elevate everything around Drew Aller, so Aller can then also elevate his game to be the piece that sends Penn State over the top. Like, again, I don't believe Penn State's going to win a natty in my lifetime. I'm at peace with that. But if they're going to, it's probably going to be a guy with arm talent like Drew Aller. But the pieces around him have to step up. I think they've done a really great job retaining a lot of those pieces. And I think they've brought in maybe only 2 skill players who I think are going to have immediate impacts, and that's Quentin Martin and Julian Fleming. And from the Fleming perspective of it all, and Bill, I'll just toss it right back to you after I make this point. I don't think Julian Fleming is going to be a top 4 pass catcher on this Penn State team. And I think if you're expecting that, you might want to reevaluate your expectations. But I think the best thing Julian Fleming has brought to Penn State for these last 8 months is be a guy who cut his teeth for 4 years in the best receiver room in America, in Ohio State, and bring that energy to State College. If he did that, if he's doing that, if he does that, I think the Penn State receiver room right now has enough talent to get them to 11 wins.
Yeah, and we'll get into this when we actually do a deep dive into the offense. Some of the quotes that have come out of the wide receiver room have been and about the wide receivers have been very interesting.
Do you have an example? Is it the one about?
We'll get.
Okay, I got you. I think I know which one you're talking
about. We'll get to that. It's a lot of stuff that I think does reflect probably pretty well on Fleming, and also, I think we have to remember that Trey Wallace being back and healthy would be huge if he's able to stay healthy. Did you know Penn State went 3-2 when Trey Wallace caught a catch in a football game last year?
They only went 3-2 when he caught a pass, or when he didn't catch a pass?
When he caught a pass.
He only played in 5 games.
No, he probably I believe he played in more of them, but he only caught passes in 5 of them: West Virginia, Delaware, UMass, Ohio State, and Ole Miss.
Oh, great! So 2 of the 3 that they won were against basically FCS foes. That's fun.
Yeah, interesting.
Get your best player the ball in big games, my brother. Oh my God!
And that's I think the overarching, as we talk 10,000-foot view of Penn State's offense, they did a terrible job getting. Nick Singleton is the guy here. I'll mention him again in a sec. But even Katron Allen, even Theo Johnson, literally the second most athletic tight end to ever come through the NFL draft combine.
Also, he fought Aiden Hutchinson today at camp?
I did.
Yep.
I did.
Good for Theo.
The Giants and Lions have been doing a lot of fighting. It's great. Omari Evans, when he got when, in the moments that he got an opportunity to play. Even a guy like Tyler Warren and Keandre Lambert-Smith, two guys who caught a lot of passes and were heavily involved for Penn State, they didn't always do a great job taking advantage of the fact that they have really good athletes. They had really talented, raw dudes on their offense. And as a result, we saw a Penn State offense that looked pretty limp in big moments and lacked that big play threat. And some of that's on Drew. This is a thing we'll talk about down the road. But as I look at this offense, I just think the option and the opportunity of getting the ball to your guys in areas where they're not immediately being tackled by someone, or they're not doing one thing that Mike Yurcich loved doing: get a first down, get up to the line of scrimmage quickly, see what look that you have, and if you have the right look, just throw that little screen out to your wide receiver. He loved doing that. The problem with that is that you are getting the ball into a guy's hands and then making him do things after that. And the order of operations is inherently a little bit off after that. And Andy Kotelnicki is someone who likes to use a lot of pre-snap motion, likes to scheme his guys open and then get them the football when they're already moving, when they're already moving quickly, when they're already into space. And I think just that little difference is something that could be really good for Penn State's offense. And do you know what else, Matt, I think is really good?
I'm going to say, Bill, this is a pro. We've been off for months, and you nailed what I'm guessing is the intro to the home field ad read.
I am. I'm talking about our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Of course, Home Field has been our podcast sponsor since we decided to go podcast only, however many years ago. I truly do forget how long it's been. It's been, this is our third or fourth year?
I think this is year 3 of just the pod.
Year 3 of just the pod. Jesus. Yeah, it's been great, and Home Field Apparel has been there with us the entire time. Home Field, a premium collegiate apparel brand based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. They're right out of Big Ten country, and they make some of the best college sports apparel that you will find on the market. Anything you want, Home Field Apparel will have for your school if you're a Penn State fan, or your school if you are if you went to another school. I always go to Slippery Rock as my example here. They have great Slippery Rock gear if you have any Slippery Rock fans in your life. If you have family that went somewhere else in the Big Ten, one of the best things you could do is get them some gear from Home Field Apparel. One thing they have coming this week, dropping on Friday this week, are these absolutely unbelievable preseason kickoff box things that every time a new one hits my timeline, and Penn State is going to have one in this release. It's a couple of t-shirts, it's a crew neck, it's a hoodie, there's some socks, there's a koozie. It is unbelievable. They're doing some of the best stuff in the sports apparel game right now. And if you want to be able to get involved, get your hands on some Home Field Apparel product, and you have never gotten anything from Home Field before, use the promo code RLR23 for 15% off of your first order. We will make sure it is still RLR23. We haven't gotten everything all sorted out with them, but for now, use the promo code RLR23 for 15% off of your first order. Thank you again to Home Field Apparel for sponsoring the pod. Thank you to Home Field Apparel for always sponsoring the pod. Matt, let's get back to talking.
We'll get a new promo code from you guys this week.
Yes, we will. Let's get back to talking about Penn State on the defense side of the ball, and I'm going to read you a couple of numbers, Matt. Are you ready?
Hit me. I love numbers.
At the end of last season,
I really thought you were just going to say 8. I really thought you were just going to rattle off some numbers at me.
34, folks. At the end of last season, Penn State had the number 4 defense in the country by defensive SP+. The way that SP+ works is you have your offense number, you have your defense number, you have your special teams number. Your offense number is how many points you'd be expected to score in a neutral field. Defense, how many you'd allow, whatever. Penn State was 4th defensively, with the number being, in all their simulations, 10.5 points per game. That's the easy way to think about this. This year, Penn State is once again 4th, but the number is 9.3 points per game. So, while Manny Diaz is gone, while there are some really big losses on the defensive side of the football, Matt, the computers coming into this season believe that Penn State's defense is going to be a little bit better coming into the year.
It's exciting. I mean, I don't know how, frankly, and I don't want this to sound disrespectful to the guys currently in that room, or to Tom Allen, or to that defensive staff, because I think the world of all of those guys. It's just hard for me to imagine a defense playing more freely and in a more dominant fashion than what we saw last year. But if the numbers say it's possible, listen, buddy, sign me up. Like, I'll take a ticket to that ride. You got to be crazy not to. And I get it. Like, there's a lot of high end talent coming back for Penn State, and it's obviously led by KJ Winston and Abdul Carter, who I think is gonna, with the news of what happened this week with a couple of players' dismissal from the program, I think Abdul's role is going to be very fluid week to week, which is very exciting. But also, like, a part of me is bummed that, like, his role in his probably his final year of college won't be Abdul, go rush the passer, like, go crazy, bro. Because I think that would have been great to watch. But and then, those are the two headliners. But I love the secondary pieces, and I'm not saying that in terms of like corners and safeties, like the quote unquote secondary pieces surrounding those.
Options,
yeah, thank
basically.
you. Yeah. The other starters who aren't the all American candidates. I think there's a lot of talent there too, and that has me, definitely optimistic that this team that this unit can be really, really good once again.
Yeah, I think a big thing to mention here is that I believe a lot of last year's defense's success, and this is not meant to be a knock on them, but by then they had multiple years in Manny Diaz, his specific defense. And Manny had that rapport with the guys. You had guys who were I'm actually not going to say no doubt NFL guys, because two of the guys we thought were no doubt NFL guys, and Curtis Jacobs and Kalen King, were both undrafted free agents. But
Kalen King was like the third last pick of the draft, in fairness.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Apologies. Yep. But you look at some of the guys that they had on that defense. It was a lot of talented guys who had a lot of experience in a defense. And the big difference this year, I would argue, they still have a lot of really talented guys. Obviously, you're doing projection with a guy like Abdul Carter at defensive end, a guy like Denai Dennis Sutton at defensive end, a guy like Tony Rojas at linebacker, guys like Aldavian Collins and AJ Harris and Cam Miller at cornerback. But they're doing it under a new defensive coordinator in Tom Allen, a guy who has gotten plenty of praise over the years for what he's done with lesser heralded talents at Indiana, but still guys that turned into really, really good football players and were really good fits within his system. And when I look at that, and where I look at how so much of the success on Penn State's defense last year was based in continuity, Matt, it makes you think if they could get up to speed with how Tom Allen wants to do things early on in the season. And that first game against West Virginia is going to be a huge pain in the ass for them. But Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA team that doesn't project to be especially great, they have the opportunity to be a really special defense once again by the time they have that first really major test. West Virginia obviously is going to be a really big test to them coming into the season. West Virginia is 25th in offensive SP+, but there is what West Virginia looks like it's going to be and what we can usually bank on a Lincoln Riley team being. And if they could be 5-0 with the defense that looks like it's an elite unit once again, I think they have the potential. We knew going into last year that last year's defense was going to be special. This year, I'm not as convinced that they're going to be special, but I see that they have the potential to do some really incredible things if it all clicks.
And the weird thing about this, not weird thing, but interesting thing that we won't have to touch on because we'll do position previews later on into the next couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Bill, there are 25-year-olds who are going to be playing defensive tackle for Penn State this fall. Grown men in the two deep. Hakeem Beamon, who is what he is at this point, Zane Durant, third-year player, flashed early on, and then two guys who I'm so excited to see, Keziah Izzard, who I think is really kind of fallen by the wayside. Not really hearing a lot about him this summer, which is always kind of concerning. You never know what's going on, like maybe injury. I don't think we have anything on it, but it's just been that quiet for him. And then Devon J. Thomas, formerly Devon Elise. Devon played some of his best ball down the stretch last year. He looked good, I think, especially against Ole Miss. And to watch that group of four, where three of them are in their fifth and sixth years, is a really good base for your defense, especially if
Agreed.
you're going a lot of 4-2-5 and Jalen Reed, I think, is going to play in the box a ton. But if you're going to take a traditional, linebacker off the field and have an extra defensive back, you're automatically, sacrificing some size. So then to go, hey, 24-year-old Devon J. Thomas, excuse me, you're in, I think is a really good spot to be. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, and it seems like he brings Devon J. Thomas specifically brings a lot of professionalism and leadership. And, Franklin's had some quotes about how his best teams are the ones where the coaches aren't leading, the players are. And he's one of the guys who brings that leadership and demands and has that respect from all of his teammates. It's a really good thing for a player to have, especially a guy who's been around as long as he has. He's a guy I'm very excited about, but
he's going to walk on 3 senior days, Bill. I talked about it last year. He is going to walk for senior day as often as he did not walk throughout his college career. That is amazing.
It's a good gig if you can get it. Matt, let's wrap up this episode of the podcast by focusing on the players that we're most excited to watch. We'll do one on offense and one on defense. I will let you go first on offense, and if you take my guy, I will then go first on defense. So who's the guy you're most excited to watch on offense?
I mean, my character arc would tell me to take Tyler Warren, but it's not Tyler Warren because I think I know what he can do. The guy I'm most excited to watch in this offense is Omari Evans. And I think that might be that might be your guy. Is that your guy?
Nope.
Perfect. Amazing. Omari Evans burned red shirt as a freshman as a converted quarterback. Omari Evans was on the field for the game-winning drive against Purdue back in 2022 in his first collegiate game. Omari Evans clearly has talent that the coaching staff has seen flash in bunches for that to be his role so early. I think that under Mike Yurcich, how to use his talent wasn't something he understood how to do. And that sucks for Omari Evans to pretty much have 2 years where he could have done a lot more, I think. So to see how Andy Kotelnicki, a guy who emphasizes getting the ball to his players already in space and letting them exist in that space, benefits few players as much as I think it's going to benefit Omari Evans. So that's my pick.
Yeah, and an interesting thing with Omari is that he's one of those guys who he brings something that they needed last year. And it's just that opportunity to take the top off of the defense. And we saw with his one touchdown against Michigan, his only touchdown of the year. He had 3 catches for 34 yards that weren't his 60-yard touchdowns against Michigan State.
Real quick, that wasn't a touchdown, Bill. He was down at the 1. His touchdown came against
that's right.
It came against Delaware from Bo Pribula in garbage time. Like they couldn't even get him the ball against Delaware in something realistic.
Yeah, so you now have that option of a guy who takes the top off of the defense and makes everything beneath that a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And even if he is able to take that top off the defense, the number one thing that we have been excited about with Drew Aller from the moment he was a kid at Medina was he has arm talent that you just can't teach. Mm-hmm. And he didn't frequently enough get an opportunity to take advantage of that. And Omari Evans is the kind of guy who can help him do that. This is an easy option. This is an easy answer for me. I'm going Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton last year, let me actually read his numbers from his freshman year as well. As a freshman, 156 carries, 1,061 yards, 6.8 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns. His long was of 87 yards. Wasn't much of a receiver, 11 receptions, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. He grew considerably as a receiver last year. 26 receptions, 308 yards, 11.8 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns. But as a runner, remember those numbers I gave you for his freshman year, 156 carries, 1,061 yards, 6.8 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, 87-yard long. Last year as a runner, Nick Singleton got 171 carries for 752 yards, 4.4 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns. His longest run of the year was 24 yards. His longest run of the year was 24 yards.
That's bad.
He's one of the most dynamic talents that Penn State has ever had, and they could not figure out one, how to get him consistently going in space, and two, how to get him consistently going as a runner. I thought he was pretty good at getting through the line of scrimmage, but struggled to make that first guy miss. My pet theory on it is that it just turned into a snowball thing or a quicksand thing where starts off, and then it just like gets worse and worse the more he tries to get past the problem. We'll see what ends up happening. But in an offense that is designed to get your playmakers the football, in an offense that is designed to get guys in positions to get the ball and make something happen, Nick Singleton should be the guy who benefits the most from this. Should be the guy who benefits the most from this. Other than Drew Aller. Drew Aller obviously should benefit from this. But if we get the best version of Nick Singleton this year, that is going to be huge for Penn State's offense. It is going to make the running game better, obviously. It's going to make the passing game better, obviously, as well, because I wouldn't be stunned if we see him be a pretty consistent and pretty dangerous option within Penn State's passing game this season. Matt, where do you generally come down on Singleton as we're getting ready to go into this year?
Nick Singleton is a running back who, when you give him a running start and when you get your own guys, pardon my language, get him the fuck out of his way, he can do special things with the football. The way the offense worked last year is that there was no deep threat. There was just a ton of traffic underneath and in that second level that it made it near impossible for him to get to the third level. Get guys out of his way and let him do his thing. And if Andy Kotelnicki can do that, which I have a ton of data that tells me he can, I think Nick Singleton is going to be, I don't want to say the best running back in the Big Ten, because I think the Minnesota kid's really good. I think Henderson's really good. I think Judkins is really good. But Singleton can be in that echelon. And I think Katron Allen can be in that echelon right there with him.
Agreed. Defensive side of the ball, who are you most excited to watch?
I really want to say deny Dennis Sutton here, because I think he's going to be fun to watch. But Bill, you'll remember I adored Ellis Brooks in his time at Penn State. I thought he was wildly underrated. I think he had like 100 tackles or something his senior year. I think he was so reliable. A bit limited physically, but very reliable. I think Kobe King is a better version of Ellis Brooks, or can be. I think he's not going to make any flash plays, but I think he's a little bit more athletic. I think with the helmet communication in there, I think he's really going to assume a leadership role under Tom Allen's defense. And then I think one of the most underrated, I'm just going to name undrafted middle linebackers now. I think one of the most underrated linebackers to come through the Big Ten in the 2010s was T. Gray Scales out of Indiana. Like, I love T. Gray Scales. Tom Allen coached that guy up. I think Kobe King can put together, like, this is going to sound super lame to people who don't know ball, but like a T. Gray Scales, Ellis Brooks level season, which is really good football in the Big Ten. And that's what I'm excited for. Kobe King is going to be a very boring player a lot of the time. He's not going to get a ton of sacks. He's not going to lead this team in interceptions. But man, is he going to be a consistent tackler for that defense. And that is never something that you can have enough of out of your middle linebacker.
Yeah, and you go back to Ellis Brooks, his final year at Penn State was 2021. He had 100 tackles on the year, was Penn State's leader in tackles that season. Last year, Penn State's top tackler was, or 2 years ago, Penn State's top tackler was Jair Brown with 74 tackles. Top tackler from the linebacker position was Curtis Jacobs with 52. Last year, Penn State's top tackler was KJ Winston with 60. Top among linebackers was Kobe King with 59. Penn State just hasn't had, and part of this is a good thing. They have so many havoc plays, so many negative plays that guys aren't getting to the linebackers frequently enough to get tackled. But Kobe King's the kind of guy, like you said, you can just kind of set your watch to, if you're going to be near him, he's going to tackle you. An Ellis Brooks type, a Jason Kabinda type, that type of guy in the middle of Penn State's linebacking core. And the guy I want to say is Abdul Carter, because because we're seeing him on the Micah Parsons, the path that Micah Parsons very likely could have been on if he was able to play in his third season at Penn State. Obviously, we don't need to tread over that old ground again, but I'm actually going to go in a different direction. I'm going to stay at linebacker. I'm going to go with Tony Rojas.
I knew it. I
A
knew.
guy,
I knew if I didn't take Tony, you were taking him.
Yeah, he's a guy who was tabbed from the time he was in high school as a guy who had the potential to be a superstar. We saw him in limited action last year. He didn't play a ton for Penn State, but they did find ways to get him on the field. Played a good amount against Ole Miss, 21 tackles on the year. He had a forced fumble, had an interception against Maryland. I feel like they do not move they move Abdul Carter to defensive end under two circumstances. One, he boosts them at defensive end, and that's where his NFL future very likely is going to be. And two, if they didn't think they had a guy at linebacker who could provide the kind of splash plays that made that made Abdul Carter such a dangerous player at defensive end. And I think that Tony Rojas is the guy who has the potential to do that. I mean, Matt, it's very hard not to be excited about that young man.
I mean, Tony Rojas does what Abdul Carter does, like in the aggregate, much better. But like Abdul Carter's a much better pass rusher than Tony Rojas could ever be. Like it's perfect. It works out really well. Both guys get what they're best at. Tony Rojas was, I think, the Virginia State Offensive Player of the Year as a running back. He moves crazy well. Like he's going to be able to truly cover sideline to sideline should that pop up. Like I don't think there are too many running backs who have Tony Rojas' in-man coverage on that Tony Rojas is like a guarantee to get burnt like a lot of linebackers are. Like that probably Abdul Carter would have been. If you put Abdul Carter covering, Quinshon Judkins on a wheel route, I'm placing my rent on the wheel route every time. Rojas could get in there and make a couple of plays here and there. So he's a guy I'm really excited about. The linebacker core, I think, has a lot of things to work through, especially depth-wise. But if they go the heavy 4-2-5, those top two pieces are really good ball players.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's funny because when I look through this defense, last year there were a lot of guys who I was really excited about because I knew what they were. I was really excited for Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, Daquan Hardy. I was really excited for Adisa Isaac, for Chop Robinson, blah, 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 blah. You look through and there's a lot of guys on this defense. Abdul Carter, Deni Dennis Sutton, defensive tackle, not as much, but at linebacker, a guy like Kobe King, who's played a lot of football, but is still, I would say, is some growing to do ahead of him. Dom DeLuca, Tony Rojas, Tamir Robinson, all the guys they have in their secondary. Where it's a matter of I want to see what they can be, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to be. We're going to get a sense of what they're going to be over the next couple of weeks in the lead up to the West Virginia game. And as we get ready for the lead up to the West Virginia game, we're going to be here talking about Penn State football as we get through one of the more exciting parts of the calendar. It's that part where you could just start to feel football being back. You can start to feel college football coming back. You see the videos of what college players are doing at camp. You see the videos of NFL teams in camp getting into fights with one another. We have a college football video game now where you could do normal people things like beat the hell out of Pitt because they don't deserve to be on the same football field as Penn State. All these things that make this time of year really fun and special. And I'm excited. I'm fired up to get back into doing the pod, fired up to get back into college football season. And Matt, any final takes before I send the people off onto the rest of their day?
Bill, you read not Bill Feldman. Oh my God. Sorry, Bill.
Bruce Feldman.
Thank you. Sorry, Bruce. He's not listening. Bruce Feldman's Freaks List today. Did you?
I didn't get a chance to, but I know Penn State was well represented and very well represented at one position in particular.
Are you talking about the same guy I'm talking about here, Bill?
I believe so.
Kickoff specialist Gabe Wosu got a shout out on Feldman's Freak List. I have said since he took over that role that he does not get talked about enough. It is so funny to watch a defensive tackle in another universe be a kicker in this one. And I'm very excited for hopefully an increase in media attention for one of the more underrated parts of this Penn State team as a whole. Like Gabe Wosu is now Jordan Stout, set it and forget it for me level good. That's super exciting. I'm glad he got some recognition today. So I started weirdly talking about punters, and now I got to end it by talking about kickoff specialists because we are so back, baby.
We are so back. We are so back on the pod, and Penn State football is so back. Thank you, as always, everyone, for listening to the podcast. I want to give a shout out one more time to our sponsor, Home Field Apparel, for a very specific reason. Nick just dropped into our Slack. Our promo code is now RLR24. It is no longer RLR23. It is RLR24. Use that if you've never purchased from Home Field Apparel before to get a 50% off of your first order. But yeah, the usual sign off goes here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you go and listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it might be. If you want to go onto YouTube, subscribe to us over on YouTube. Hop into the comments, talk about Penn State football with other Penn State fans, and follow us on social media. You know, we're still over on Twitter, goofing around at RLR blog. We're going to be there. We're going to be here all college football season long. One last time, thank you very much for listening, everyone. For my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, I'm Bill DeFilippo. Take care, everyone.
25 days to go. 24 days when you're hearing this.